Welcome back to Thoughts from a Bookworm. I'm Abigail Grace. Today we are talking about the final Gambit, which is the last book in the first Inheritance Games trilogy. The author has since released news of a second trilogy that is not really related to the first, but kind of is. There's main characters and side characters and stuff like that, but we're today the final Gambit. This book here is the last book in the OG trilogy, which is my least favorite in the OG trilogy, and my reasoning for that there's a couple of reasons. One, it's the longest book of the trilogy, and two, it's the slowest book of the trilogy, which I don't mind slow books. That kind of stuff doesn't really bother me, but coming right after the first two, where it's clue after clue, puzzle, riddle, this, that, adventure, action, this and that, coming to book three, where it's all of a sudden kind of everything comes to a standstill until like the last 3 or 4 chapters, was kind of like, oh, okay, we're slowing things down a bit. There was some stuff that came up that was a little bit confusing and just didn't raise more questions than it answered. I called from the beginning, again, that Eve was no good, which I was kind of on Avery. I mean, Avery kind of called that from the beginning too, so that wasn't really like a big deal. But it just seemed very obvious, okay, something's going on with this girl. We also are finally told why Tobias Hawthorne picked Avery, because at the end of the first book, it was like, oh, well, actually, we're not really told why at the end of the first book. It's kind of in the middle of the second book that it's like, oh, he thought she was Toby's daughter, that's why. We're finally told in book 3 why Tobias Hawthorne picked Avery. And to be honest, it was a bit anticlimactic, but I'm not mad about it, because it was one of those grand reveals where it was kind of like, oh, that's it. But it was very realistic, and I feel like a lot of times in these types of books or series, there'll be so much build up to it, so much build up, and this is grand reveal, oh my gosh, this I never could have imagined, and it just feels very fake, like the author just kind of made it up as he or she went. There was no planning for it. It was just like they had built so much tension that it had to be this massive ending, and this didn't feel like that. Like I said, it was very anticlimactic, but I was genuinely not mad about it or disappointed about it. It was kind of just like, oh, that's why, okay, that makes sense. I can see that. And then I, move on. So the reason for Avery's inheritance is that Tobias Hawthorne, back when he was, a baby, was the protege for another inventor, oil tycoon, billionaire, Vincent Blake, that's who Tobias Hawthorne kind of modeled his riddles, his puzzles, his clues, his mysteries after. Vincent Blake was the OG Tobias Hawthorne. Tobias Hawthorne, then kind of learning from him, learned how to, what's the word? I don't want to use the word like screw him over, but basically, Tobias Hawthorne learned how to be sneaky and crafty and cheat people in a way that was legal. So that's what Tobias Hawthorne did. He did that to Vincent, and he knew that Vincent was going to come after him once he was gone, once presumably the boys had inherited, once Tobias Hawthorne was out of the picture. So Tobias Hawthorne picked Avery so that she would be the fall guy, not his grandsons, which is kind of low and dirty of him, just to pick this poor random girl to take the fall for Vincent Blake. But, and I like that the author threw this in, because it kind of somewhat, not redeemed Tobias Hawthorne, but just kind of made me think more highly of Avery. And Tobias Hawthorne said, because he leaves Avery this voice message, kind of, which is, a little spooky, eerie. He's talking to her from, beyond the grave or whatever. But he leaves this voice message explaining everything. This is what Vincent Blake is going to do. He's going to come after you. He's going to destroy you. But you stand a sliver of a chance to beat him. So individually, those two reasons I don't think are valid. I think it was very stupid or foolish or whatever of Tobias Hawthorne to leave Avery everything just to take the fall. And then at the same time, if he had just left Avery everything because he thought she was the only one who stood a chance against Vincent, any of the 4 Hawthorne grandsons could have gone toe-to-toe with Vincent. I am convinced of that, because that's how they were born and raised to think. They were born to think critically and puzzle solving and all that kind of stuff. But when you combine those two reasons, he not only picked Avery because she was like his grandsons in that way, but because if she was not able to go up against Vincent, and beat him, she would take the fall and his grandsons would, be spared global humiliation or whatever, which is like, okay, Tobias Hawthorne, he's got some issues that are not good. He's not obviously the most moral character, but he is thorough and he's thoughtful in a way that he thinks things through, not thoughtful, like considerate of others, obviously. So most of the clues in this book, Avery finds a couple different clues in the swimming pool. She finds something in the chess set, all kind of pointing to not one thing, but a couple different, one like message, which is don't trust anyone. So that automatically puts Avery on the defense once again about Eve. She also has Elisa, her lawyer, trying to talk her into putting her money, the Hawthorne money, in a trust that the lawyers would then control until Avery's 21. So when Avery hears that word trust, don't trust anyone, put the money in a trust, Avery is kind of like all of a sudden like, I don't know who the heck to trust or to believe. Eve is able to, before Avery finds out that she's working with Vincent, Eve is able to talk to Mallory Laughlin and find out the details of kind of like where she came from. Mallory says that she and Liam, who was Vincent Blake's son, fooled around when Mallory was 16. He was in his 20s. So there's that kind of weirdness. She got pregnant. He then left. Eve then runs off to go confront Vincent Blake, which is a really bad idea. Grayson follows her, goes with her. And again, the whole thing with Grayson and Eve just solidified in my mind that Grayson had a lot of unresolved issues when it came to Emily, because the whole thing about Eve is that Eve was like an exact copy of Emily. She looks exactly like Emily. When Mallory sees her, she like totally even more ignores Rebecca because, she got the daughter back that she really wanted, which is a whole other story of just messed up mother-daughter drama that is so sad. My heart just breaks for Rebecca. But Grayson automatically, like the minute he sees Eve, he automatically assumes, okay, she's a good guy, we need to protect her, she's one of us, this and that. He kind of becomes very hostile toward Avery and Jameson because Jameson is kind of on Avery's side. Jameson's a little bit more like kind of trying to evaluate more objectively, whereas Grayson is like, Eve's a good guy, Avery's like, Eve's a bad guy, Jameson's like, let's just kind of see how this plays out. So that Grayson in this book, I really didn't like Grayson in this book, to be honest. He kind of went back, and I know that's probably kind of the point of him seeing Eve, having all these memories of Emily dredged up, but he kind of went back to being the cold jerk he was at the beginning of book 2, instead of like having learned and grown from his experiences. He kind of just reverted back to who he was. I don't know. I was not a fan of Grayson in this book. We do get to meet, because so far we have met, or not like met, but it's been revealed that Jake Nash is Nash's father, that Sheffield Grayson is Grayson's father. We get to finally meet Xander's father, Isaiah Alexander, who he, to me, so far anyway, has the saddest story, because he tells Alexander he knew Sky got pregnant with him. He wanted to be in his life. He, didn't have that much money working as a mechanic, but he like saved up enough for a lawyer. He got a paternity test, but like it came back negative. So there was no grounds for him to fight on. Tobias Hawthorne buried him in legal fees, and Isaiah Alexander tells Xander, like, I wanted to be there for you. I wanted you, and I still do. So Xander has a very rare moment of like shock and vulnerability, and like Xander's my least favorite Hawthorne brother, but I love this scene for him because I have been very blessed to have 2 loving parents my entire life. My parents have been together since they were teenagers. They've been married for, I don't honestly even know how many years now. I have 3 siblings. Like, I've got an amazing family life. So I can't imagine ever feeling unwanted by either parent, and to grow up your whole life thinking and being told by your mother you were unwanted, only to find out when you're 17, 18 that you were wanted this whole time. Your family had just been keeping that from you. Like, that would be so heartbreaking. So I love for Xander that he gets a sense of closure, that he's able to have Isaiah Alexander like come into his life. There's some implications that Xander like starts to work at the mechanic shop with him, which I think is absolutely perfect. So that whole scene was so amazing, so great. After Avery puts together everything about Vincent and William Blake, who's actually Liam, who Mallory mentions Liam, she puts all that together. She then starts to wonder, okay, so Eve is actually biologically related to Toby, to Liam / William, and to Vincent. She knows Vincent's coming after her. That's when Avery starts to really think, okay, Eve is like, something's not right about Eve. Something is going on with Eve. Vincent says that he wants Liam / William's remains, which are buried or kept somewhere on Hawthorne House. Avery puts together that he's trying to trap her by, I didn't know this, but apparently it's like illegal for you to transport or like pass on a dead body without like authorities being involved or alerted or something. I don't know how that works or why that's a law, but Avery puts together that Vincent is trying to trap her, at least potentially that way. So she goes to the police. She tells them about Liam's remains that are there. They're going to get the remains to Vincent eventually, and it will all be legal, so Vincent won't have any blackmail for her. So the book ends with a very cool chess championship? There's a word I'm thinking of. Chess, I don't know, competition between Vincent, Avery, Eve, and Toby. Because Avery's able to get a hold of Vincent. She's like, okay, if I give you Liam's remains, what are you, besides Toby, what are you going to give me? Vincent, now remember at the end of book 2, Avery found a coin from Toby that Toby had left to Hannah, where it was in Jackson. It turns out those are one of 5 seals that Vincent Blake created. And if you own one of those seals, you own part of Vincent Blake's estate, which is massive, even compared to the Hawthorne estate. So during the tournament, it's going to be Avery versus Toby, Toby versus Eve, and then Eve versus Avery. Vincent Blake tells Toby that if he wins both of his matches, he can go free. If he loses both, he has to stay at Vincent Blake's and publicly acknowledge that he is Toby Blake. If Eve wins one match, she gets to keep one of the discs that she wants, and if she wins both of her matches, she gets all 5 discs, making her the sole heir to Vincent Blake's fortune. If Avery loses both of her games, she agrees to give Vincent Blake a blank check promising a favor for him at his discretion. If she wins one, Vincent will release Grayson, who he took captive, and if Avery wins both, Vincent will keep the fact that she and her people killed Sheffield Grayson and didn't go to the police about it, because Vincent Blake knows about that. That's one of the things that he's been holding over her. So that's the setup. So Toby and Eve, father and daughter biologically, play first, and he intentionally loses to her. Vincent Blake knows that and tells him, okay, don't do that again or I'll cut your finger off. Or no, he'll carve up Eve's forearm, which this dude has like such a weird thing with carving people up. I don't get that. Toby also loses to Avery because she has beat him before, so it was possible. So he loses to Avery. So Toby has played both of his matches. So Toby lost both of his matches. So he now has to stay with Vincent Blake publicly as Toby Blake, kind of forfeiting his Hawthorne title. Then Avery and Eve play. And Avery, she doesn't like play stupid, but she plays rash, naive girl. And it was brilliant. So she's already won one match. So Grayson has gone free. If she wins her second match, the scandal about Sheffield Grayson will be kept under wraps. So she's playing Eve. She intentionally loses to Eve. So Eve has now won both of her matches. Eve is now the sole heir of the Vincent Blake fortune / estate. Avery then plays like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did this. Please, Vincent, let me play you. We can do it again. Like, if I win, I'll give you anything you want. I'll give you all of the Hawthorne money. Like, totally playing dumb. And like, again, it was just, like brilliant, like of the character of the author, inspiring the character to do that, because it just, I don't understand why people don't do that in books and movies. Like when you're faced with a situation, because we all do that in real life. If we're kind of in a tough situation, it's like, oh, I'm just gonna, play dumb. Main characters don't do that, and it drives me crazy. So I was like so happy that Avery was like totally reading my mind. I was like, yes, just play dumb. So she begs Vincent to play her, and she says, if I win, I will put the Hawthorne money, all of it, in a trust and make you the sole trustee. And if I win, you leave me alone forever. Like, that's all I want. I just want you to leave me alone. Vincent's like,
okay, sure, you stupid little girl. I just watched you get creamed, but yeah, sure, let's play chess.
So they play chess. She wins. She beats him. And one of the things that Tobias Hawthorne told Avery in like the voice recording is that if you best him, if Avery bests or beats Vincent, he will honor that win, because he is a man of not integrity. I can't remember the word that Tobias Hawthorne used, but basically he's a man who honors being beaten. If you beat him, fair and square, even if it's not really fair, he'll honor that. So Avery beating him in chess, he then now has to leave her alone, and she's confident that that will be it. And again, it was almost anticlimactic. Like, really, this big bad villain is just gonna, okay, you beat me at chess, so now I'm gonna leave you alone forever. But it just made sense and was realistic in that world, because in the world of Vincent Blake and Tobias Hawthorne and the Hawthorne grandsons, where games are how they function, if you win the game, that's it. There's no like, and even if the games are playing dirty, like Nash said, there's no such, it's not playing dirty if you win, which I don't agree with, but that's the rule of this world. And it was just, I liked the way that it ended. I wasn't a fan of the story part of it. Like I said, it felt very slow, but I liked the way that it ended, because while, yes, it was kind of anticlimactic, kind of a slow burn, slow end, it made sense in the world. And it wasn't like, I don't know, it felt very realistic. So like, I know that's kind of a backhanded compliment. Oh, it was anticlimactic, but I liked it, but I really did like it. So the book ends on the 1-year anniversary of Avery inheriting. She's a billionaire. They have like a New Year's Eve party, but it's happy. Xander came up with it, and he was like, happy new billionaire or something like that. That was really cute. The one thing I didn't like is that Avery transferred 94% of her fortune to, like various charities and trusts and games and stuff like that, leaving her only 6%, which she states out the numbers, and it's like, I'll still be a billionaire even with only 6%. So it's like, okay, that's fine. But it's like, I like living vicariously through characters, especially a character like this who's a multi-billionaire who has several private jets and different houses and different islands. Like, that's just kind of fun for me. So I was so afraid that at the end of this book she was gonna like give it all away and go back to living like normal people. So I'm glad she didn't do that. I'll give her that. Then there's an epilogue in the final Gambit that takes place a year after that. So 2 years after the first Inheritance game starts. And it's Avery. She's on an interview. She's saying, oh yeah, she and Jameson have been like traveling the world in this past year. And she's announcing the start of a like worldwide game where you can win, millions and billions of dollars. And it's called The Grandest Game. So that's how book 3 ends. There is a 4th book that we will be talking about next week that takes place between the end of book 3 and the epilogue. So it's in that year gap. So there's some hints as to why Avery wanted to host a game. There's a game in the Brothers Hawthorne, but we'll talk more about that next week. I apologize again for the longer episodes, but this book series, honestly, right now, is my favorite. I know I said the Lunar Chronicles are my favorite, and I still stand by that. Lunar Chronicles is my favorite series, like, just in general. But I love these books so much. I grew up reading the Nancy Drew books, and like the original Nancy Drew books, not the remake with the yellow and the blue writing. No, the original blue cover, black/orange writing. And I love those books. I love mystery stories. I love mystery books. I like puzzles too. And so this book, it encapsulated this series encapsulated so many things that I like. Mysteries, puzzles, and books. And it was just so much fun. So that is where we're going to end today's episode. If you stuck around to the end, thank you. You're a real one. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss an episode.